Hey guys, thank you so much and welcome to the Game Your Future podcast. I'm Daniel and I am joined with us today is Joseph Descans or Descans, I think is how we pronounce it. And he is an author and speaker and he's going to help us today with getting over our fears. So Joseph, thanks so much and welcome.
Thank you for having me today, Daniel. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about yourself as far as so author and speaker. I guess what have you done?
Okay, so my author is talking about authorship. So I've written a book called Hosea, the prophet who married a prostitute. So it's a modern day interpretation of the book of Hosea from the Old Testament, and as if he were alive today in San Diego, California. So a modern day rendition of the Old Testament prophet.
Very cool. Awesome. And so one of the things that we talked before getting on this call was you've dealt with a lot of kind of getting getting over kind of situations that have been scary or getting over fear as we call it. And as gamers, I know one of the things that we notice in video games is that nothing really scares us, right? It's there's a disconnect right between reality that says like I lose in the game, who cares, and then I can just get up and keep trying. But then when we get to the real world that has real world consequences, suddenly we are just stuck and we just don't take action. So I wanted to get kind of your perspective as far as what is that what has helped you, I guess, what kind of situations have you been in and how did you overcome them, right? So help us get through the fear, if you will.
Okay, very good. So I think what we're going to talk about today is mostly just surfing and professional surfing, some of my experiences and experiences with my kids, and maybe some of the stuff I've done too, working in trees. So overcoming fears. So the biggest things I've had to deal with as far as overcoming fears and surfing is surfing waves over 40 feet. So I surfed professionally for several years, over a decade, and I guess the biggest thing I did during that time is the K2 Challenge. And so that was the winner of 97, 98. So the K2 Challenge, put on by K2, what is it, the ski company, right? And so it was a contest, photo contest of who could catch and make the biggest wave of the entire winter in the entire Pacific Ocean. So you had to have it documented on film. And so some of the top professional big wave surfers in the world were going that, Hawaii and California and Mexico, wherever in the Pacific Ocean they could catch a big wave. And so several experiences there, but the one experience that stands out the most that has helped me, and I reflect on it still today many times when I'm dealing with fears in common life, and that's really what it comes down to is translating these experiences into your everyday life, your practical stuff, right? Um, so just in surfing the big waves, the 40-foot waves, when you get out there and it's one thing, like usually you don't sleep at night, like the night before you can't sleep because you're thinking about it. You got so much adrenaline going, and then you're prepped, you got your boards, hopefully you're in good health. On this particular day that I'm talking about, I actually had dysentery. So I had dysentery coming and going, so it's very interesting, just what you know about dysentery. What I've heard about is you get dysentery and you die.
I say
But
I've played Oregon Trail, and for those that remember that old game, that was kind of the meme, if you will. That was the popular thing on the Oregon Trail is that you never really it was always so hard to make it because your family would get dysentery and they would die. So
okay,
I only
yeah,
have heard of it, right? So it's been in a part of gaming culture as well, but
yeah.
to actually have it is like wow.
Yeah, so it was terrible. And the thing is I first got it, what happens is when you get the big waves, there it usually brings storms that bring them. And so sometimes, a day or two before the storm shows up, the waves show up, but then or afterwards. So when the storms come, it rains and it washes all the cow poop and all the other stuff out into the ocean, right? And so you're close to the shore, so you're swimming in that stuff, and then you risk getting dysentery. So the first big day of '97, in the fall, I went out surfing at Swami's, and it was double overhead plus and just beautiful waves. And that was on a Wednesday. And then I went back out on a Friday, the next Friday, 2 days later. And while I was out there, I just got really sick, and I had to come in and use the bathroom, and and then eventually I made it to the doctor. But I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a flu or something, and it would go away. And so I remember getting really sick that Friday afternoon and into Saturday. I was bedridden. And then I got a call to go surfing at Todos Santos Island. That's where we would go surfing to catch the big waves. And I was in bed. I was history. And so I got a call on Saturday morning to go Sunday morning from Rob Brown. So it's going to be me and Rob Brown. He's a photographer. He's got his own boat. And Mike Parsons, who's a pretty big name in surfing big waves. And and so I told him no, I couldn't go because I was sick. And I could feel the shock over the phone. He's like, I can't believe it. This is epic opportunity, and you don't want to go. And so I just said, oh, I'm in bed, like I'm sick. And so, but I got better. I eat good, I get healthy and whatever. And so I got better. And then the first big day I went back out, I think the first day we called it the big, the bad, and the ugly. That was a couple days later on Tuesday. And we just had a whole bunch. It was an El Nino winter, so there was tons of waves. And so I went out that day, and I caught one wave and I wiped out on a huge wave. And then I was fine until then. And then just kind of the dysentery hit me and it wiped me out. Um,
Oh no.
yeah.
So you
So
were still suffering at that point, is what you're saying? Like you were still sick?
I was still sick, but it's like I got better and I felt fine. Not
All right.
fine, but pretty good,
So
good enough.
okay, so you're
Good.
over the hump of it, right? But you're still sick, but you're feeling a bit better, and you're like, okay, you're like, I have to do this. I have to go. Wow.
Yeah, because it's it's people go, oh, it's big, this one spot. Like we go to Waimea. Well, Waimea only breaks maybe a few times a year, right? So yes, it is a big wave spot, but the swells only happen every so often. You might have a year where there's none. And then on other years, you might get one or two or five or so many days. So it doesn't happen all the time. So you're watching it constantly. And then when the day comes, boom, you're out there or else you miss it, right? It might only be a few hours. And so that's your opportunity. And if you miss it, it's gone. And so, anyway, so I was feeling better. I wasn't feeling good, but I felt good enough. And so I went out that day and, I caught one wave, I wiped out, broke my board, all that wonderful stuff. And then I got really sick. And then I remember I ate some soup in Ensenada, and I came back to life and I went back out surfing in smaller waves at San Miguel. But anyway, so then I don't know, it was a couple weeks later, something like that. I forget how long ago it was, but and then I got called again. We went out there, and I just remember the day. This is typically what happens. It's like you can't sleep the night before, like I said. You got tons of adrenaline, and you get up early, like 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock, whatever it is. You go, well, it's an hour and a half drive to Ensenada. You get on a boat, 45 minutes, something like that. And then you're out there. And then, of course, you get to the point where you're actually going to paddle out. You paddle, there's a channel, meaning it's totally safe. The waves aren't breaking there. You're looking at the waves. You can just jump right off the boat and paddle over. And so, but you get to the point where you're going, okay, now is the time. Like, we're going to jump in the water now. We're putting on our wetsuit. That's when it really hits you. It's like all systems go. It's like your body is just overloaded with adrenaline, dopamine. I don't know what all the chemical concoction is going on, but um, it's like typically like you I wouldn't I would be shaking, like a little shake, a little quiver going on, trembling, and my fingers and toes are like buzzing, but they're numb and you can't feel them, right? And so the full physical manifestation of fear going on. And so on this one particular day, we were out there, and Mike got his stuff together, and he got off the boat before me, about 10 minutes early. And there's only so much room on the boat, so you kind of got to let each other do their thing. And then, if you're, because you got to get your board and your wetsuit and all that stuff. So he got off the boat about 10 minutes before me. And so then I put on my wetsuit, got my board, jumped in the water, and he was already out there and waiting for a big wave. And right as I was paddling, getting out to where the waves were breaking, a wave came in, a set came in, and he paddled for a wave and he couldn't quite catch it. And I was just getting there. And so I go, I can catch this. And so I turned around and I went. I had the full manifestation of numbness and buzzing and all of that going on. Eventually 20 minutes, half hour or so, it'll just kind of chill out. But I had just jumped off the boat, just got out there, and so it was all going on full. And but I turned around, I caught the wave, I made the takeoff, made the whole wave, and that was it. Hurrah, I made it. And so, but just think about things in life are scary. There's lots of scary stuff you have to deal with life. And
Exactly true. And so one of the things I wanted to ask, so very cool, like the so being able to finally catch the wave, even with so like the fear and the trembling going all over it, because one of the questions I know people have is how do you get over fear, right? How do you prevent the fear so that you can do the thing? But what you're saying, right, is that you didn't necessarily like remove the fear, right? You didn't block it or remove it completely, or especially ahead of time, where you're like, well, I got to get this fear out of here now. I can do this thing, right? So you're feeling it all the way through when you were doing it, is what you're saying, right?
right, exactly. And you just have to do it. You have to do it, do it scared, as the saying goes. You got to do it scared.
So I think, and that's powerful because that's it. I think so many people wait, right? They wait for the kind of like, and taking the surfing example, they wait for the perfect wave, right? Like, oh, that one's pretty good, but no, we're gonna wait for the next one. We're gonna wait, and that's how they feel with like the fear. It's like, well, that's too scary, so I can't do it yet. When things look better, I will do it. But
Right.
and I like your example where it's like, well, there's maybe only a few times, during the year, and some years, like you said, not, where certain locations they just don't even get the wave. So you have to be ready for that opportunity. And I think that happens in life where there's certain opportunities that come along, and it's like, well, are you going to go for it? And it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's the right one. It seems kind of scary.
Yeah, exactly. So when you have to seize the day, in the moment, you have to go, whether you feel like you're ready or not. One of my sayings I used to say, my friend repeated me one day. I would say, "As ready as I'm gonna get." They go, "Are you ready?" "As ready as I'm gonna get." And I just jump off the boat and go. And you just don't have a choice. When the moment's there, you got to go, and you can't go. Oh, I'm gonna wait for this to get perfect. All of my ducks all lined up. I'm gonna wait till I feel good. I'm gonna wait for this or that. You can't do it. You put yourself in the position, and when the moment comes, you got to go.
That's wow. Yep. Because just simply waiting around for someday for things to be perfect will never come. So that's so important to know, to understand, and like you said, to do it scared, do it anyway, is so powerful. So I guess there's probably still some people that are like, okay, well, I understand that I won't just get over the fear ahead of time, right? It's going to be scary when I do it, but when it comes to that point where you're like, okay, you got to go, like what are you thinking about, or what's kind of the trigger to say like, okay, go? Because there's so many people that might even get to that edge and they're like, okay, I'm scared, like I know I can't, I'm not going to get over it, but they still like hesitate right at the edge. Like how do you get that last push like over the edge to finally do it?
Wow, that's crazy. I guess everybody has their own situations they're dealing with, right? And so there's so many variables there. But, it just has to be something that's already established in your heart beforehand. You have to prepare. There's only so much preparation you can do. You can only do so much. But ultimately it comes down to just a place in your heart where you say, "Hey, I'm gonna go, do or die, crash and burn, whatever happens to me, this is the only opportunity I've got." And so, it's a bummer to look back on life and opportunities, your big chance, and then you go, "Oh, I chickened out." And I look back on things where I just didn't know, or blah blah blah, and stuff. But you don't want to have a big thing that you were prepared for and did everything you could, and then at the last second you chickened out. I mean, that's just a bummer. And then you have to remember that, you know, for the rest of your life. Even if you did miss the chance, you don't want to do that. You want to go, okay, I missed it. I'm not going to do it next time. And maybe your whole life has changed. Surfing, you only got so many years where you're in your prime, or you can do it, other athletic achievements, right? But then there's business, these things transfer over into business and personal life, etc. So, you can, even if you did fail at some point in your life, you want to remember that and put it in a positive sense and go, okay, I remember that. I'm not going to do it again. I did it here. I'm not going to do it here. And, just
That's
go.
wow. That's very powerful. And so I think that's a great for people to hear too, because it's like you said, maybe like something like sports, surfing, that when you have to be athletic and you have to be like being in your prime, like you said, so you could do it, you can enjoy it maybe more as a hobby later, but then like maybe you're more prone to injury. But like something like business, right? Like just simply the work that you do to earn a living, maybe you can usually do for a much, much longer time. And so understanding that, it's never too early or too late, right? So, but I think the most powerful thing that you said is really just, to kind of paraphrase maybe is like, not having these regrets and not looking ahead or, I'll say that it seems like you looked ahead to say like, okay, what do I want to do?
Hmm.
Right. And I think there's something so powerful about identity, right? To say like, I'm a person who does this. I'm a person who wants that. Right. So I think what you're saying, right, is because you don't want to look back with regrets. So I think one of the greatest tips, one of the greatest tools that I've heard for that is that you look ahead, and whether you look like, a day ahead or even like a year ahead, and say like, what do you want to have seen? Like, looking in the rearview mirror, if you were, like, what has happened? Are you a person that went for it? Are you a person that chickened out?
Right.
Right. So if you imagine yourself a year from now and you chickened out, that doesn't feel good, right?
No.
So absolutely, I would understand that. Like, if you thought about it, and like you said, kind of prep. You can prep ahead of time, right? You can only do so much prep. I understand, but having that little bit of prep is good. So you can say like, even if it's just that mental, like image, just that identity to say like, I do this. I'm going to do this. Just
Hmm.
simply saying that is so powerful because then you'll look ahead to say like, yeah, I'm someone who did it, and you'll take that action when it gets to that point where it's like, all right, is it time? Is it time? And it's like, and in that moment, you might remember, yeah, I'm that kind of a person. I'm doing it, and it might be just a split second, but then that'll help you go.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. And life surprises you, and you just don't know when that next step up is going to come, that next opportunity. Um, just another experience I had. My first 40-foot day, like no one knew it was going to be 40 foot. I had a friend of mine. I have a hard time finding people to go surfing with me. Right on the big days at Todos Santos, you just mention the name and they picture 40-foot waves. And they're all I'm not going to do it. But I talked a friend into it, and he kept asking me, how big is it going to be? It's not going to be over 20 foot. And so just at the surf reports we had at that time and the weather radio, it said 3 to 5 to 7. And so I multiplied 7 by 3 is 21. That's 21 feet. That's basically how I was measuring things those days. If it's 7 foot in Del Mar, San Diego, it's going to be 21 foot out there. Um, so according to the weather report, it was only going to be 21 foot, the biggest waves. And we got out there, and sure enough, there was 40-foot waves, and nobody was ready for them. And you want a 9.6 surfboard for that, and I had a 7.0 or a 7.6. And the other guys that went out there that were better prepared, they only had 8.6s. So nobody was ready at that time. The biggest wave I caught was maybe 25 feet, and then boom, all of a sudden there's 40-foot waves. And so I ended up catching one and I wiped out. But, I went for it. The opportunity was there. It was totally unexpected, but I went for it. And that started, the next level for me.
That's great. And if nothing else, right, it's just like a fun experience, right? So even if you wipe out, you're like, yeah, I wasn't fully prepared and I did it anyway, but gosh, what a lot of fun, right? And it just taking away that experience of it.
Yeah, that was an awesome experience. There was a lot of people that chickened out and said, "Hey, we weren't here. Don't tell anyone." Because when the time came to paddle out, they didn't come. They didn't paddle out. They're like, "Nope, we weren't here. Don't say we were here."
Yeah, and it's a different experience then, right? Where you're like, nope, I'm gonna check it out. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna paddle out.
Yeah.
That's
Um, I don't know how much time you got, but I got a cool kid story if you want to hear about my kids.
absolutely, yeah. We still got a little bit of time. So yeah, what happened with your kids?
Okay, so I've taught a lot of surf lessons to people over the years, and the number one thing I teach people in surfing and in water safety is don't panic. Okay, two words: don't panic. Because just when you panic, that you lock up, you freeze up, and that's when you sink and drown, and all kinds of terrible things happen to you. So you just got to stay cool. And then on top of that, it would be nice if you could just say, "Oh, don't panic," and then never panic. But the fact is, you're probably going to panic at some place, at some point. So then, what do you do when you panic? So you got to go, "Okay, I'm panicking. How do I get out of this?" What is it? The fog of war, right? So even experienced people and whatnot will have a moment where they freeze up. And so anyway, I always taught people, don't panic. So that's the number one rule of water safety. And then of course it applies in many other aspects of life also. So when I had kids, I taught them, they were in the water before they were 2 years old, out in the ocean. And I always taught them, don't panic. And so one day we were out surfing. I had my two youngest sons, and they were like 8 or 10 or something like that, right? And so the older one, Abe, he was on the softboard, and the younger one, Hezekiah, was on the boogie board. And so the waves were maybe, waist to chest, maybe head high. And so you have the inside and the outside, the more consistent waves kind of on the inside and then bigger waves on the outside. And they would always stand on the sand, right? And then when a wave came, they would jump on their board and push into it and go, right? But one day, Abe, he was on the softboard and he broke through the inside and made it to the outside, right? And so, woohoo, it was the first time. And so he's out there, and then his brother on the boogie board, Hezekiah, he sees that and he goes, okay, well, Abe's out there, and so I gotta go, right? And so he was going for it, and then a set came in, and he got caught inside. And when he got caught inside, that means the wave kind of broke like right in front of him. And so he got caught inside, and he had a leash on his wrist. It's connected to the boogie board, the body board, and it came off, right? And so he lost his bodyboard. So he was just out there swimming, right? And so I was a little ways away on another softboard. And so I saw this going on. I could see that he was scared, right? And so I closed the distance about halfway. I wanted to get close enough so I could talk to him and he could see me and I could kind of comfort him, but not close enough where he can swim over and get on the board, right? And so I paddled over and then I picked a good spot and I stopped and I saw him and I started talking to him all, hey, what happened? And he's all, I lost my boogie board. And I go, okay, so what? And he goes, I'm scared. And then I go, so I did what I always do. What's the number one rule of water safety? Right? And he goes, "Oh, don't panic," So he knew it. He knew it.
Ew. Oh, so good.
Yeah. And then he says it again. He goes, "But I lost my bodyboard," and it's over his head. So he's doing the dog paddle out there, right? And so I go, "So what do you got to do?" And he thinks for a second. He goes, "I got to swim in and get it." And I go, "Okay, go ahead." He just kind of looks at me and then he goes, "Okay." And so then he turns and starts swimming toward the beach. So it was all good.
Yeah,
And, but he had that moment of panic, and so I just kind of worked him through it. And so that was a breakthrough point for him.
that's fantastic. So much. Yeah, and just the simple act, like you said, of just having that kind of preparation, right? Just to say like, yep, if you're in this situation, here's the way through it, right? And so because I think the real lesson that yeah, I heard here was that you know things happen, right? So life is not perfect, right? Life is a meandering, winding kind of road, right? And things happen. Bad things can happen. And failure, I guess, is possible, is inevitable, but like it's not truly failure unless you just stop, you just give up. And it's just learning from these kind of things and being prepared, right? So we can learn so much by just taking this little example to say, hey, yeah, shit's gonna happen. So when it happens, how do you get through it? How do you get through it just safely and quickly? And so knowing where to go, right? Like that kind of focus, right? Where you say like I just need one thing to say, what do I do in this situation? And just kind of I love that you kind of grounded him like, okay, well, what do you need to do? What do you need to do next? And
Right.
that helps sharpen the focus to be like, okay, so basically the because usually the panic, right, is just kind of the overwhelm. Like you don't know what to do. You don't know what's happening. It's like, but if you got the one thing, like what's the one thing you have to do next? Suddenly that's not hard, right? It's just the one thing.
Right. Right.
That's fantastic. I love that. So, what a great story to end on too. So, I think as we're winding down for this particular episode, so gosh, Joseph, so thankful for that you're here. This has been fantastic. If there's like one other, like kind of, if to sum it up, like what's one piece of advice you would say to say somebody who's living in that fear and it just doesn't know how to take that next step? What's like the one thing you would tell them?
Yeah, you don't know what life has out there. You don't know what's going to happen from day to day. Sometimes you can plan and do the best you can and get it all ready and be as prepared as you can. And other days, it's just spontaneous. Things happen. Either way, you got to have, like a plan, like don't panic. So simple. And then when you see yourself panicking, you've got plan B. What do I do when I panic? And just go, okay, walk yourself through it. Just kind of a final thought, it's like the trees in the forest, right? You can't see the trees for the forest. When you're cutting down a forest, it's one tree at a time. And you just focus on the one tree, like you said, one simple step. Okay, this is how I get to the next spot. Do this one little thing. If you're looking at the whole forest, that's too overwhelming. But if you're focusing on one tree and one tree at a time, then you can do that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Joseph. This has been fantastic. And where can people learn more about you and or get your book?
Okay, so you can get my book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, other places online, and you can also find me at my website www.josephdescans.com.
Awesome. And guys, we'll have the link for you in the description as well, so you can check out Joseph, learn more about him, and check out his book. So it sounds super cool. Gosh, this has been so much fun, Joseph. I have one other question for you. So I know maybe you're not as much of a gamer, but if you had to pick one video game, what would be your favorite game?
Oh my goodness. So I don't know, kind of a cross up between Dig Dug, Galaga, and Centipedes. I know that's three games. I like Pac-Man, but those one of those. Sorry, I'm
Those are
old.
the go-to. I love it. So much fun. I've definitely played a bunch of those, and those absolutely fun. So I love that answer. So cool. Guys, thank you so much for watching. And like I said, check out Joseph, check out his book. And I hope this has been valuable for you guys as far as just taking that next step and 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 again, it's not getting over fear. It's actually just going through it, doing it scared, doing it anyway. Right. And you can do this. So just being able to move forward. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've gotten value. Thank you so much for watching. Stay awesome, and we'll see you in the next one.